Good afternoon, keepers of the cash. Gary B, the casual comic guy here, and joining me as always for Savage Saturday when we do our live shows, we got my good buddy Torsten over here. Torsten, how you doing today, sir?
Doing well. Yeah, it's like 5 p.m. here. Very nice Saturday. I was already playing video games.
Well, you and I always make our time difference work, right?
Yeah.
Oddly enough, Torsten and I met because of Conan and became friends through Conan property. Yeah. Also with my other buddy, Steve the Voice White, who I've made do 3 shows with me this week because
yeah, I know, like holy crap.
I mean like that.
I've seen him more than my family this week. Right up here in Canada.
Right.
Got my Timmies.
We are blessed today to have none other than someone who is shepherding in a whole new era of Conan the Barbarian, none other than Grim Jim Zub himself. Jim, thank you so much for carving out time for us today.
Thank you.
We certainly appreciate it.
No, it's true. And it has been. I like Torsten was saying, it's been an amazing Saturday. It's been a wonderful day. I'm running around like a chicken with my head cut off the last few weeks, but it's nice to be able to carve out the time. I know we have been talking over email off and on, about trying to set something up and trying to find the right time. And I'm glad we finally made the stars align on it. So it's really, really nice.
Nice. To start out, the first thing I wanted to do upon meeting you live today was not only thank you for signing this book from Steve, but also for doing me the honor of choosing one of my quotes to put on the back, which surprised the hell out of me and making me a part of Conan publication history.
Man, that was such a fun, early on, especially we've been getting phenomenal reviews on the book all the way through the run. But early on, we talked about, doing these press quotes on the back. And a lot of times publishers will pick, the biggest websites around. And I said, I just want to pick the best quotes and the most passionate, because then in the end, that's what really, really matters to me. And you guys do. Like, the fan base has been so phenomenal. And the support and the passion that we've gotten from the readership it's changed my life without trying to sound too hyperbolic. It's really been phenomenal. So thank you guys for covering the book. We're now like 20 issues into the run, and we're still getting a crazy amount of reviews, a lot of discussion, the kind of feedback that I know a lot of books, even big flagship books, don't always get. And so that is a testament to, the Conan fandom. That is a testament to the works of Robert E. Howard, and just the passion that I think we all try to bring to it, to reading and to enjoying and to analyzing and all the stuff that this entails. So it's amazing.
Right. Well, I got back into comics when it was in 2019, when Marvel announced that they were reviving Conan, they were getting it back. Mm-hmm. And the old man in me, because I'll be 55 soon, flash back to the Marvel years of Conan, because that run is so stellar. Again, like you guys are doing now, so many spectacular writers and artists touch the property, and you guys are carrying that tradition forward. My first time I was subjected to your writing, and I found it was through that second Conan art.
Cool.
In issues like 19 and 20 of that were the ones that hit hardest for me, because you got what I consider quintessential Conan moments down in that arc with him and Mayway, where Conan's locked in a cage. He's still finding a way to do the honorable thing, because he has his own code of honor, which is always against what civilized people consider honor when they're not very honorable at all, right? Mm-hmm. He's also defending her. He also knows that she's his ticket out of there. So he's playing multiple angles, but never sacrificing her for his own good, and still finds a way to save her. And then they group up in the later issues and they have that adventure. And I'm not going to spoil it, because if you guys haven't checked out Jim's arc on Conan the Barbarian over at Marvel, you got to go read it. It's fun. It's spectacular. So then when it went to Heroic Signatures and you were announced, I was super excited because I loved your run so much over there. But what I think is unique with you at Heroic Signatures is you guys are over there, to me, are doing what Marvel did 50 years ago. You're relaunching interest in the Conan IP, much like Glenn Lord did with Roy Thomas, right? But now you have Momberg and you and your team.
Yeah, it's such an amazing opportunity, you know, and I feel so fortunate. It's hard for me to put it in words, honestly, because getting to do the book every time, you know, I've gotten to work on Conan, my very first time working on the character, in terms of writing, I actually have, I don't know if you know this, one of my first professional comics gigs, I've worked in different positions throughout comics. So I worked as an illustrator and a colorist. I've done lettering, I've done editorial, all kinds of different things at different companies, kind of figuring out how everything worked. And then finally, you know, made my way where I wanted to be, which was in writing. But one of my first gigs ever, I was working at the Udon studio. And when Dark Horse got the property back, we're talking 2003, 2004, and they reprinted the older original Marvel stuff, they recolored all of it. They brought in sort of new digital coloring to sort of try and update the look and get readers to check it out. And I actually colored like 3 issues of Conan on reprints at Dark Horse. And so my kind of comic book career almost started with Conan in terms of coloring. The next time I would get to work on the character was Conan Red Sonja with Gail Simone, drawn by Dan Panosian and Randy Green, which was an incredible experience back in 2015. And at the time I thought, man, this will be my only shot to ever work on this character that means so much to me and has that kind of legacy. And then to get another shot at it, you know, over at Marvel, first in terms of doing the Savage Sword issues. Well, actually, even before that, I had the character in Avengers No Road Home. So I was
such an underrated story.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So
the person I talk about it, him and Wanda work perfectly together.
Exactly.
Man. It was really contentious, I know, with the fandom, because they were like, oh my God, Conan and superheroes. And it was one of those things where, like, it really was an editorial mandate where they were like, look, we're getting Conan back. We want to give him the biggest platform possible. I think a lot of people make assumptions where they're like, why are they doing this? Or they're trying to ruin it or whatever. But the reality was they were like, look, we want to have a long-term relationship with Conan back in the Marvel universe. And so, you know, the Avengers is our biggest property. It's the biggest media property around. Putting Conan in an Avengers story on this broad scope, we were doing this weekly miniseries, was a huge, it was a huge platform push, and it was a real mark in terms of their desire for more people to be reading Conan as a lead-in before the Jason Aaron launch on the monthly book. I had done an Avengers event called No Surrender. We had an absolute blast on it. It was Mark Waid and Al Ewing and I. And then they said, hey, do you guys want to do another one? Because Endgame's going to be coming out. We've got more bandwidth for Avengers. We're getting Conan back. We want him to be part of this story. And my first thought was, oh God, that's a terrible idea. And Tom Brevoort, my editor, was sort of like, hey man, like, I know you love this character. Don't, like put your heart into it. We want you involved because we want your passion. Like, just figure it. We'll figure out a way to make it as, kind of respectable as possible and as exciting as possible. And so that's why when we did our big jam, and we actually, we worked on that series in person. So I went to the Marvel office and we had a boardroom.
Oh, wow.
For like 8 hours, we were jamming story ideas, and we knew Conan would be part of it. And we were just throwing out as many different characters, which characters were going to be in there, and then how they would interrelate potentially with Conan, in and amongst the story that we were putting together, this broader kind of, big stakes Avengers story. And I was very insistent. It was funny. I thought I was going to have to fight Mark and Al to write Conan stuff, because I assume everyone loves the character like I do. And almost immediately, both of them just acquiesced. Mark was like, oh, I never grew up reading Conan. He's not one of my big characters. And Al was like, I like Conan, but you like him more. And I started laughing, because I was like, I want you guys to fight me. Like, I have the knowledge.
Right.
Don't just give up. Don't just, come on. It's like I came with the legal case and I was going to tell them how we were going to do this. But then they just let me do it, which was awesome. And so we brainstormed a bunch of different stuff. And one of the things I said was, I want to keep Conan in the Hyborian Age for the majority of the story, that I don't want him to instantly be popping around and doing stuff. And that's when we came up with that idea of having an issue that was almost all Conan, where he was running around, and which character would be a good fit. Well, it was, the witch and the warrior. So it was going to be Scarlet Witch and Wanda. And
it was great. Tension. It was magic.
It was awesome. And Sean, he and I'd worked together on Pathfinder and a couple other Champions together. And he was super passionate. He loves sword and sorcery stuff. So giving him that platform to be able to do like a real classic style Conan story that just so happens to have other Avengers stuff flying at the same time was a real joy. And again, I had that weird moment of like, this is going to be my last shot to do Conan. Got to make the most of it. And so at the end, they were like, we need to find a way to sort of deposit him in the Marvel universe for future ideas. And I'm pretty sure you got to keep in mind that it was such a creative day where we were just jamming and whiteboarding, and I'm pretty sure I came up with him getting dropped in the Savage Land at the very end of it. So I was like, well, if we're gonna put him somewhere, we got to put him somewhere that feels as Conan as possible. And then Jerry Duggan would take him into Savage Avengers, and they would do that run. But at that point, it's like the only time I'd written Conan was co-writing with Gail and then co-writing with Mark and Al. And don't get me wrong, I had a lot of creative input, but there's that weird part of your ego that's like, I just want one that just has my name, like as the writer,
that you can own.
That I can say, like, whether or not you enjoyed Conan Red Sonja, or whether or not you enjoyed No Road Home, it's hard to take ownership of parts of it because it's part of that collaborative process. And it's just like a stupid writer ego thing. And so Mark Basso was the editor on the Conan books, and they decided they were going to relaunch Savage Sword as a full color anthology series with different creative teams. And so I cornered Mark at, I think it was New York Comic Con that year. And I was like, I've got a couple ideas for just like Conan stories, you know, solo stuff. I know Jason's going to be on the book, and Jason does these crazy long runs. Like he'd done long runs on Thor and everything else, Wolverine. And so I was like, I'm never going to get to touch Conan again. So I've got to get a way to pitch, you know, like a solo story. And so I pitched two different stories. And what's funny is both of them now have been published. The first one I pitched was The Gambler, which was a 3-part, you know, Savage Sword story. I didn't pitch it as 3 parts. I just pitched it as like Conan in this crazy gambling hall where you can bet your life away. And then the other one was called Leaving the Garden, which eventually we did at Heroic in Savage Sword. That was the one I did with Richard Pace. And both of them were meant to be Howardian. They were meant to be self-contained. I don't want to sound egotistical. Iconic in the sense that they have a very clear through line in terms of narrative. They've got a very clean kind of payoff. We set up all the pieces,
and they kind of have that pulp feel to them, where it's
exactly they get into the action quick. Fiction. You got it. They get into it fast, and the stakes are very clear. And at the end of it, Conan shows how much of a badass he is, but not just whatever, you know, kill a wizard, save the girl kind of stuff. Like very different sort of ingredients, but still feeling like it's in the Hyborian Age. And Mark liked both of them, but they sent them over to I don't know if they were called Heroic Signatures at the time. Sent them over to Fred Moundberg and Jay Zetterberger, and Fred and Jay really liked the Gambling Hall one. And so I fleshed that out. They told me I could have 2 to 3 issues. And I'm like, well, if you're giving me 3, I'm taking 3. So like, more pages? Yes, please. And so I fleshed this thing out to make it a 3-part story with a pretty clean beginning, middle, and end structure on it. And then they put Patch Zerker on the artwork. And again, it was like, oh man, okay, we got to do, you know, the best damn, you know, Conan
and
story.
He's doing beautiful Solomon Kane.
Yeah, so amazing.
He's a great artist.
He's amazing. He's amazing. He's a great.
And his writing, I never read him before. Incredible.
Man, he is deeply read and deeply researched, which is awesome. He really puts the time and care into it. I've seen his scripts and I've seen his story notes and stuff, and he's got like footnotes and references, and he does a very deep reading pool, especially because he takes the historical aspect of it very seriously. Like, if we're being honest, I've got an easier time with something like the Hyborian Age because, yes, there are resources, but there's a lot of gray area. There's a lot of muddiness, and I can just sort of say, well, it's this kind of thing, or, you know, they've previously referenced it like this, and I can lean into that, or I can lean away from it because it's not real history. Yeah. And he's got a much harder row, you know, in terms of
Solomon's much more niche.
Yeah,
and there's specific time periods and locations.
Yeah,
when we talked about the story, like, I'm a historian and I found some errors, but in generally it was very well researched. And after all, at the end of the day, I always say that a story must trump the history in a certain way, so that storytelling comes first. And I always say, you know, especially with the Hyborian Age, if they're like if there is something not consistent, I always say, hey, they're just like two different tales told like around the fire.
Exactly.
Yeah. So
our point of view, like at Heroic, is that obviously the original Howard stories are the only canon.
Exactly.
And
it's the best.
I'm going to have as much internal consistency as I can, because that's going to make for the most entertaining long-term kind of book that we can build. But at the end of the day, the Howard stuff is the real deal. And that's all there is to it. I'm trying to honor that as much as I can and respect that stuff. But I can't let that also become a straitjacket to not tell any new stories.
Exactly.
Because then the character, gets frozen, and then you won't find a new audience. Then you won't find new readers or keep, that kind of fire burning bright. Anyways, getting back to the sort of thing. So we did The Gambler, and I genuinely thought, this is going to be a cliche, but this is the last time I'm going to get a chance to write Conan,
Right.
And so I made it a real mic drop. Like, this feels like a Weird Tales story as much as I can make it. It's got cool payoff. It's got something intrinsic about savagery and civilization that Conan sees and exemplifies in terms of that story. And what I thought would be my last shot really became my audition for longer, involvement, because Fred and Jay read that story and they were like, this guy gets it, like really, really gets it. And so what I didn't know was that Jason wasn't doing a long run on the book. Jason was only going to do 12 issues of the flagship, monthly book. And so almost as soon as the book launched, they had in the back of their minds, they got to keep an eye out for somebody, who might be able to do long-term on the series. And, I had a good rep at Marvel. I was doing good stuff. I love Sword and Sorcery and Dungeons and Dragons, obviously, like that's, And so then they came to me and they said, look, we're looking at expanding this line. We want to do multiple books with other Howard characters, like Solomon Kane, like Dark Agnes and others. But again, almost like how Avengers No Road Home was a platform to sort of bring Conan potentially to new readers or bring him back to old fans, we want to create a book that's going to become a bit of a showcase for these other characters. Can you do a crossover book with a bunch of Howard characters? And I was like, oh my God, like what a crazy, amazing thing to do. And that was where we went back and forth and we started to develop what would become Serpent War. The original name for it, when I pitched it, was called Kingdom of the Worm, spelled with a Y, like that.
Oh, that's a good name.
Yeah. And in my head, I thought it was going to be a trilogy. We were going to do, I think it was Kingdom of the Worm, Kingdom of the Snake, and then it was going to be Kingdom of Decay. And we were going to do 3 miniseries over 3 years or something like that. But that was getting ahead of myself. First, we had to land this first one. And so I pitched this, Kingdom of the Worm, and we were talking about creating a new kind of Cthulhian creature that would, come to haunt the Marvel universe, and what would be up against would be, Set. And then Marvel was like, look, we want to plug it into the Marvel universe because in theory, the Hyborian Age is the prehistory of the Marvel universe, or at least that's the way they always played it.
Like, especially like when you see like one of my favorite crossovers of Marvel history is like Atlantis attacks with the serpent.
Right.
Crown.
You got it.
Also,
you got it.
And
so I was incorporating that stuff as well. We were talking about all that stuff. And if we were going to have Set, they said, can you incorporate at least one Marvel character? And I wanted to minimize the amount of superhero-ness to it because I knew we were going to have so many other pulp characters that we were trying to exemplify, right? And so that's when the idea of using Moon Knight came into it. And I was really excited to use Moon Knight because I felt we could do a really fun kind of contrast where you have someone like Mark Spector, who basically works for a god. He's the avatar of a god on Earth, and he has a very antagonistic relationship with his god. Like he doesn't, he's not faithful in the traditional sense. He's a tool of Khonshu, right? And then you have Solomon Kane, who is someone who obviously is deeply faithful and will never meet or interact with his god, and is a paladin for his god, and is a warrior. And so I love the interplay of that someone who knows and interacts with their god kind of hates it and feels burdened by it, and someone who will never see their god or interact with them believes in it utterly and has that faithful quality. And so that was a fun little bit that we were playing with. Then because we don't have access to Red Sonja, it was like, okay, I want to pair up Agnes and Conan.
Yeah, Agnes is an underrated character. She's so great. Like,
absolutely.
those stories are amazing, especially
and there is a lot of Agnes in Red Sonja.
Of course there is, and that was sort of the joke. The little tip of the hat was, look, we're getting a crossover, but we're not. Like, we're getting the classic, but we're not. In some ways, the more pure kind of version, because she's somewhere between Red Sonja of Rogatino and Agnes.
Yeah.
And so just being able to play with these different pieces and play it across the Marvel universe, it was a really fun ride. And so I sent the pitch in. We went back and forth with notes. They approved it. I got my first issue script done, and I sent it in. And on that Monday, I got a phone call from Mark, my editor. And normally, most editors are way too busy to do phone calls. They're almost always doing emails. And so when you get a phone call, it's usually like bad news because you don't want to put it in text. Like, it's a cliche, but it's true, right? And so the phone rings, and I'm like, oh crap, I guess they hate it, And I pick up the phone, and he's like, not only do we love it, I want to offer you, the monthly book because Jason's going to be leaving. And I was absolutely gobsmacked. I was just totally blew my friggin' mind because that wasn't even in the cards. Like, I didn't even think that was a possibility at that moment. I had a really crazy schedule. I was doing this book called Black Panther and the Agents of Wakanda. I was co-writing Iron Man with Dan Slott, and I was writing Champions at the time. And I had a creator-owned book that I was working on. And so my schedule was absolutely slammed. And I was really afraid of screwing this up because I love the character so much. So I said, do you need me to decide right now? And they're like, no, take the week and make sure you've got ideas and whatnot. And so I did a bunch of reading and took about a week. I had a convention that weekend, but basically the following Monday, I called them up and I said, yeah, I'll take it. I talked to Tom, and I was stepping away from Iron Man so I could clear space. It's funny. As soon as I told him I wanted a phone call, he picked up the phone and he literally said, so you're leaving Iron Man? And I was just like, yeah. And he just
screw Iron Man.
He was just like,
don't
good.
pick up over text, right?
Well, and he was like, it's good. He goes, we all knew it. Like, the minute you got offered the book, I was already starting to hunt for someone to step in because.
But that, and they're happy for you because you're getting.
They knew it was exactly what I wanted to do. And so again, everyone at Marvel was super supportive, and it was an open-ended, commitment that I was in my head. I was like, I'm going to do Conan for years. And that was what was really exciting about it was at Marvel, I've done a bunch of these little short runs, and they're fun. I have a lot of fun doing them, but you always feel this impending pressure. Like, you don't want to do big, long plot lines or foreshadowing because what if it doesn't pay off and you get cut off at the knees and all this stuff. And so I was like, man, I'm going to just really settle in. And I just want to, I'm no Roy Thomas, but I'm just going to like settle in and try and do as much cool stuff as I can with this book and make this thing really, feel kind of classic. Like, and it was interesting because I was avoiding all the Howard kind of canon. I didn't want to reference the original stories. I didn't want to feel like I was tripping over the stuff that Roy had done or Kurt had done. And, now in retrospect, I can look back with a lot more clarity. And I think those stories are really fun. I think they work really well. But the one deep criticism I have of my own work when I look at the Marvel issues that I did on the monthly is it wasn't appointment reading. What I mean by that is the cliffhangers were good and it was thoroughly entertaining. But if you missed 4 or 5 months and you picked it up in trade, you weren't going to feel like you were missing the latest, greatest thing. It was like solid, and that's not me fishing for compliments. I think it was all solid stuff. I think everyone had the, good attitude and hard work, but it was very much like, this is good Conan, but it's not like must read Conan. If you read it in the 70s and you haven't read it since whatever, Kurt and Carrie at Dark Horse, this isn't going to make you sit up and take notice and run to the store and have to get it. Like, that was the thing. Yeah.
But it was so much needed because back in the day, I really enjoyed the Jason Aaron, like the life and death of Conan.
Sure, me too.
And afterwards, I said that your stories fit so well in because after this huge event, we needed something like.
But that's the thing is like that it's true, and I agree. But this also the downside of this isn't the 80s, right? And so, people would settle in on a subscription on a book, and it would sell whatever tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of copies just through sheer inertia. People would have their subscriptions and they would go to the comic book shop and they always collect Conan or they always collect Wolverine or Spider-Man or whatever it is. And the market now is so much more fractured and it's so much more difficult. And so you have to fight for that cover price. You have to fight for that loyalty so much more. And
I miss one-off issues because
me too. I love one-offs. I love the little two-parters. I love all that kind of stuff. And the reality is that as cool as that stuff is, the market doesn't always respond to that stuff. Or you need to establish your bona fides before you can kind of not relax. I don't ever want to get the idea that it's lesser quality, but just the type of storytelling that makes people put it on their pull list. And so we had a bad just timing because I had 2 issues come out and then lockdowns hit and we were put on pause. So I had 2 parts. Like you read The Crucible now, issue 13, 14, to 19, and it's solid. But the problem is that we had a 7-month gap right in the middle of it. And so people understandably, people have more important things on their mind. Yeah. And it seems hyperbolic now, but there was a moment when we thought the comic book industry was just gone. Like I thought, oh, I'm going to be the last guy to write Conan the Barbarian, or I'm going to be I've got 5 issues in the can that'll never get published. I've got, story ideas that'll never happen. And so when we finally came back, we were already on our back feet. Like 18 was sort of like, okay, can we please, we got to try and get momentum back. But it was already kind of spiraling. The whole publishing industry had changed and Marvel's plans had changed. And Fred and Jay's plans
weren't finished.
Yeah, I mean, Dark Agnes never got off.
Exactly. I mean, but there was a bunch. I wrote stuff for that. Marvel did an event called Empire, and I wrote 2 issues of Agents of Wakanda that never got printed. I wrote an entire miniseries called Invasion of Wakanda that never got printed. Like it was a whole bunch of material just got sort of cast aside because everyone was understandably cutting to the bone because they weren't sure what the market was going to look like post, kind of COVID. And so I was told to sunset Conan. Originally issue 24 was going to be our last one. And I was like, for the love of God, you got to get 25. That's
right,
the legacy
300 mark.
Legacy 300. We got to do it. And so we were able to convince them because I said, this could be the last time Conan's published at Marvel. Like, you got to do it.
Now,
and so we were able to carve that out. No worries. We were able to carve that out. And I stepped away from the book. If you read issue 25 now, it's very unapologetically wistful. It's very unapologetically like, we don't know what the future may bring, but we have to make the most of what we have. Like it's my own internal kind of like, you got to play with one of the big toys, one of your favorites, and you did the best you could, and you can't regret it. And that's it. That's the end of that portion of your career. Like that was how I was feeling, and that came through in the work. Really,
like, at least I got to do it. Yeah, right.
Yeah. You can't be mad. Most people never get to do it. I remember talking to someone about Avengers, and they were like, "Don't you wish you were able to do more Avengers?" And I go, "Well, of course." But then I said, "How many people have ever written the Avengers? 30? Less? I don't know. I would have to go back and count." That's a pretty amazing, group to be a part of. How many people have written Conan? Like, on the monthly book.
And a shout out to Jerry Dugan's run on Savage Avengers, which was amazing. What a smart way he ended that too. Like he nailed that ending.
And Patch did a great job illustrating all of it. And again, I think all of us go in with you're getting to work with an icon and you want to do something really special with it and you want to say something heartfelt about it. It was interesting. I talked to Jerry last year at a convention and I was like, door's always welcome. Please come back to the Highborn Age anytime. I mean, his opinion may change, but he told me flat out no, not because he was mad or bitter or anything else. He's like, I said what I wanted to say. I did it the way I wanted to do it. If something new comes up, if I have some brainstorm and I think I got a cool Conan story, but right now I don't.
Yeah, he wrote what he wanted to write.
You got it. And I think that's a really smart way of looking at it rather than just showing up to show up. You know what I mean?
Right.
And he's got enough other stuff to do. Whereas someone like, you look at a bunch of the other, even Jason coming back and doing that King Conan story in a couple issues of Savage Sword.
That was his best Conan, I thought.
It's awesome. And Jeff drew the hell out of it. Jeff had this fire under him to basically go, okay, let me show you what I can do now. Like when I drew this back in the 90s, I was so much younger and I didn't even feel like I always knew what I was doing. And he was good back then, but now he's, heads and shoulders better.
We talked to him a couple months ago and had a great time with him.
He's awesome. He's such a nice guy. And I
got to ask you though, Jim, I've been dying to ask you this forever.
Sure.
You created one of my favorite characters in the last 5 years, which is Brissa, which is not an easy feat, right? Because it's easy to make a Red Sonja clone because you kind of need that female presence in Conan worlds, right? Whether it's a Bailey or a Valeria, whatever it is. It would have been easy to make a Sonja copy, but you didn't.
Right.
You sit there and create a character that had ties all the way back to the Thurian age and embedded her in the lore and basically created someone that's important at all time periods. Can you talk about Brissa for a moment?
Sure. I mean, I've got to give so much credit to our whole team. When the chance came to do the work at Titan, and that was not assured by any means. Like it was a bake-off with multiple writers, and so I've told this.
I want to say something there.
Sure.
Back when I was still on Twitter, I was in contact with Fred Malmberg. I wrote it out, and when this happened, I don't want to say that I had any part in this, but I say, for the love of Crom, keep Jim's up.
Oh, that's very kind. Thank you. I mean, the reality is I don't know exactly how many writers were pitching. I've heard sort of offhand there were like 10, maybe a dozen people that were pitching. And every so often I'll talk to another writer in the industry and they'll say something that gives me a little sideways glance where I'm like, oh, I bet you they put a pitch in. But usually you don't talk about it. It's not helpful to go and say, man, you beat me or whatever.
Yeah. But it feels serendipitous that you're there.
Oh, sure. But I wasn't going to pitch. That was the crazy part. Fred asked me and I told my wife, I was like, Fred just asked me to pitch on Conan. They're doing a new publishing thing. He thinks they might be moving over to Titan. And she goes, are you going to pitch? And I said, I don't know. And she was just like, what do you mean you don't know? You love Conan. And I said, yeah, but I just did it. No one is going to sit up and take notice. They're not going to be able to market that thing. I was just down on myself. I was just, and not bitter, but just like trying to be as realistic as possible.
Right.
I wouldn't hire me. Like if you had to go to the marketing and go from the guy who just wrote it and it didn't sell, like that's not, and you can say because of COVID, because of all these other market forces and problems, but usually the business people don't look at it that way. They just look at raw numbers.
Right.
I've had people talk about the reverse stuff where they were lucky enough to be on a Marvel or DC book while there was some huge cultural shift or media shift. Like if you're writing a Superman book or a Fantastic Four book right now, you're going to benefit from the movie bump. And the industry just looks at those numbers and goes, oh, you're a hit artist, hit writer, and you can get a commensurate kind of, I wrote the Avengers during friggin' Infinity War and Endgame. It's far be it from me to talk about, losing out on this stuff. I've written Rick and Morty during, the height of Rick and Morty fandom. I have benefited from this.
Dragon's crossover was really good.
Oh, and in it, you put your heart into it. But the sheer fact that people are looking at it is because of this media explosion, right? And so the reverse is true. I'm not going to get, no one's going to give a damn, because why would you put me back on the book when I wasn't a sales, juggernaut or whatever. And so my wife kind of gave me, she gave me the business. She was just like, look, you're certainly not going to get it with an attitude like that. If you feel like you have more to say and you can, bring something to it, then put your heart into it or don't do it at all. And she was right. And in some ways, it's one of the weirdest pitches I've ever written because it was not in my typical structured format. It wasn't a breakdown of just narrative stuff. It was almost like I was writing a letter of advice for whoever takes over Conan next. I was basically like, here's what I've learned over the last few years working on the Conan property. Here's what I've seen in the Conan fandom. Here's what I've come to understand about the writing of Robert E. Howard, as far as I'm concerned. And what I feel like there are some gaps between what has been done, with the character over the last, 10, 15 years of publishing in comics, and where it could be when you have the benefit of this kind of fresh start. Without any of the strings attached, you can keep all the best parts. You can focus on the parts that the fandom has really loved before, but you need to be careful not to just fall into pure, pastiche and readaptation, that you can use the Howard stories as pillars, but then build in and around them, and that you can make a mature reader's book that would feel like the forbidden fruit that a 14 or 15-year-old in the 70s thought that, the monthly book
when you read
Savage
Savage
Sword was.
Sword.
Yeah.
That now we have a unique opportunity to cater to those people with a book that feels like and exemplifies those kinds of qualities. And the gist of it was, I hope you guys do that, and good luck. If you read between the lines, it's not going to be me, essentially. Do you know what I mean? And it's essentially like it's not a eulogy. Like, I'm not like Conan is dead, here's me throwing lilies on the grave, but it's very much like, I love this thing. Here's what I think about it. And I hope you guys do really well, because it's, it's worthy and it's an icon and all this kind of stuff. And I sent it in, and it was the most cathartic damn thing. I felt amazing afterwards. I felt so good because I got it all off my chest, and it was not angry or bitter. It was hopeful and excited. And I just sent that sucker in. And my wife was like, I told her that I sent it, and she's like, how do you feel? I said, I feel great. That part of my creative career is closed. They're going to do what they're going to do. And I hope it goes well for them. And a few weeks later, Fred emailed me and said, can we jump on a Zoom call? And I don't know if I've just got it in my head, like the bad news thing I told you about the phone call. They don't do good news in person, right? So I literally told Stace, I said, I'm getting on a Zoom call with Fred and Jay. And she goes, oh, and I said, yeah, they're going to turn me down on a Zoom call. And she goes, why would they do that? And I go, I don't know. I guess they're calling everyone back because they're really professional, respectful dudes, and that's what they do. And she goes, weird. And I was like, yeah.
They want to see your tears.
I literally couldn't frame it in terms of I got the job. That just seemed like such an impossibility.
Right.
Why would they ever do that?
Your wife knew it. Your wife knew it.
Yeah, it was just the weirdest damn thing. And I get on this call, and they're grinning from ear to ear. And I was just like, hey, how you guys been? And we do like 30 seconds, a minute of just, how's your family? What's new kind of stuff. And then they're like, here at the office, we've got a bunch of people, because we've got all these people in different departments, people dealing with licensing and with products and, the video game stuff and all these other things. I'm like, cool. And Fred goes, we took the names off everything. So I knew who had pitched what, but we took the names off everything, reprinted them out, and we all sat in the boardroom and we read these pitches to each other. And then we talked about what we liked and highlighted stuff. I was like, oh, that's really great. That's a really smart way of doing it. And again, I'm just like,
where's the reject? Where's the rejection?
And the next line was supposed to be, and we really love working with you, Jim, but we've decided to go in a different creative direction, and we wish you all, because that's the next line. That's what you do. And in my head, I was just waiting for that bit of dialogue.
All right, this is the setup.
And then I could just sort of put my auto smile on and go, cool, man, that is really great to hear. Very nice.
Thanks so much.
Give me a call anytime. If you guys are doing an anniversary issue, it's like the All-Star game or whatever, I'll skate out on the ice and say I Conan and do a short story for you or something. And they were like, what we really need is a long-term creative partner who's committed to the brand and is going to stick around and help us build things. And I was like, that is exactly what you need. And they go, that's why we're more convinced than ever that you're still the guy. And I was just absolutely gobsmacked. I was so taken aback by that. And I said, I think the first thing I said was, are you sure? And they were like,
what?
And Jay goes, are you not? And I was like, no, I'm totally down for doing this. I just, this is wild. And I said, how do we really bring readers in the door? And they go, well, that's what we need to discuss. We're going to literally take almost a year before we launch this book, because we want to build and we want to find the right people and we want to get the right art. And very quickly we started talking about who could be the kind of artist that would make people, freak out. And I said, the number one most requested artist, that I can see in the modern era is this guy, Roberto de la Torre. Yeah. And they said, oh, we know about Roberto. And I was like, what? And they go, yeah. Can you get him? And I was like, can I get him? And they said, yeah, we haven't been able to get consistent contact with him. He's a bit of a mystery man. And what they didn't know was I was already talking to Roberto. So that's what was so crazy, was basically right after the book, it got announced that we were wrapping up the series. I had talked to Roberto a couple of times over Facebook Messenger, and I ended up buying a commission from him because I just loved his work. I thought it was so phenomenal. When he got the request, he sent me an email and he goes, "You're the Conan guy." And I was like, "Yeah." And he goes, "I'll draw a picture for you." And he did me a really nice commission piece that I've got framed in my house here. And then that got us talking. And I just said, man, Marvel's not doing Conan anymore. And he goes, "Yeah, it really sucks. It would have been nice to do a Conan story with you." And I said, "Why don't we just do one?" And he goes, "What do you mean?" I said, we'll do a creator-owned book, and we'll just file the serial numbers off, and we'll just call it like Barbaric Tales or something. And we'll just clearly do Conan. We'll just do our own pastiche.
I mean, basically, since it's in Spain, he could just publish it via Spain.
Yeah, it doesn't even have to be Conan. We just call it, it's another character. It's like one of 100 different Conan knockoffs, but this guy's got this particular art style, and I will just tune up the Howard as much as I could. And so we were already talking about, that was an active conversation that he and I were having. And then he was sort of like, at one point he was sort of like, "Well, let's do a Western and then we can do a sword and sorcery story, or let's do like a noir thing." And I was like, "Dude, I would love to do a Western and a noir with you, but everyone wants you to draw Conan. Like, this is crazy. This is crazy not to lean into this. Like, if we don't lean into this, we're leaving money on the table. And also like just the fandom, the readership." I said, "Once you win them over with a barbarian story, then we can do other cool pastiche.
They'll follow you."
And I said, "But we got to establish ourselves, And he said, "Yeah, but what about a publisher?" I said, "That is not a problem. I can get us, I've got great contacts at Image, Dark Horse, Oni, like anywhere. We do, the quality of your work is impeccable. Don't worry about that. We'll get it going." And so we were having really good conversations. And then this pitch thing happened. And then Malmberg says, "You're the guy." And then I said, "We got to get De La Torre." And he goes, "Is that possible?" And I was like, "Give me a couple of days." And so, I reached out to Rob and I said, "I've got it." It was, it'd been a few days since we had chatted or whatever, maybe even a week. And I just said, "New plan. You become the preeminent new Conan artist for the modern era." And he just literally writes back, "Ha ha ha. How?" And I was like, "I got the diamond back. I caught it before it hit the ground. Do you want in? Like, we're going to relaunch Conan. I'm the guy." And he was just like, "Are you serious?" And I was like, "Yeah, my editor's going to be in touch. Let's start talking." And so we started negotiating it out really early. And then he did, while we were getting tuned up, he did those spot illos for Blood of the Serpent, the first novel that they were releasing at Titan and all that kind of stuff. And then that's where that image of Conan on the horseback, got done. The one that we used for the free comic book day cover and everything else. So, and
I was going to mention that, like, your free comic book days are actually like event comics. They're not a throwaway gimmick like most. And I think that's really helped lead people to find your brand over there.
Yeah, I felt like when we were talking about the option came up, that Titan was like, "We're going to do a free comic book day issue." And I said, "Okay, that is our best chance to win people over. That's got to be like our mission statement. Like, we got to get in there and really prove to people, because that's going to be the wisest."
Guys, you needed the new guys.
Well, but we needed the old guys too. Like, telling, within the hardcore fandom, they had seen a lot of Roberto's commissions, or they had seen his story in King Size Conan.
Yeah, but the Claremont story was so fantastic.
Yeah, but it was like, but that's still a really tiny slice of the overall fandom. I said, we need to get this out to as many people as possible. We have to look at the Conan #0 as being like that's our the gun goes off and we're off the starting blocks. We got to be explosive. I said, remember how good Conan #0 was at Dark Horse. That was one of the best. I mean, it won an Eisner for best single issue. Like, it's one of the best damn looking comics ever. You got Carey and Dave Stewart doing the artwork of their lives. And it's basically just like 90% of it is the opening, Robert E. Howard stuff from Phoenix on the Sword. It's just no O prints and away you go. But God, is it evocative and atmospheric and explosive and wonderful? And I said, we have to set the bar there. Like, we have to try not to copy that, because Kurt and Carey are themselves and Dark Horse is doing Dark Horse, but we need to have as much impact as that book did. We have to, at least if we don't shoot for it, we'll never even get close. We can't pretend. We have to pretend that it's within sight. We have to shoot for it. And so that was just like, okay, we have to do something iconic that feels like it's going to introduce the character, but also isn't just a retread. Like it's that weird, and you only have 12 pages and you're just like, oh my God. But we found a way to thread the needle on it. And when that artwork started coming, and the discussion with Rob was, Rob felt really chained in by full script. And I said, well, what if we did it like Roy did back in the day, or Stan, where you do an outline and then you do the pages and then I'll dialogue them. And he goes, well, do people do it that way anymore? And I go, not really, but that doesn't mean we can't try. And so that was, we decided we'd go on that much more organic kind of methodology on it. And it was alchemical. We got those pages in. I remember Matt Murray, my editor on the first arc and a bit of Conan, we got our first set of pages from Rob. And my phone immediately rang, and I Matt didn't even say hello. He just started swearing excitedly on the phone. Like that was just,
Nice. We
were both staring at them in our inbox, and we were just like, what the hell is this? We could not believe how insane it looked. And we were like, okay, as long as we can get this to market looking like this, we'll be okay. Like I don't know,
free comic book days, that one pops.
Oh man.
Yeah.
I never had a book like that. I've had, like I said, I've worked on Avengers, Rick and Morty, and Stranger Things, and Samurai Jack, and a bunch of other books, ostensibly, depending on how you want to look at it, much bigger properties. But I have never, ever had a response to a book like the Titan relaunch. I got friends of mine phoning me up, asking me if I had copies of my own book. Like I had retailers calling me and emailing me, guys I hadn't heard from in years, that were like, if you have any copies squirreled away, I would love an extra one, or I would love one signed to me, or stuff like that. And I was just like, what? Like for Avengers, I didn't get that for none of it, Dungeons and Dragons or any of it. And so I knew we'd really struck a chord, and then the first couple shows that I did after the Free Comic Day signing I did at Third Eye Comics was bonkers. I think I signed almost 1,000 copies.
Wow.
It's the only time I finished a signing and my wrist was throbbing. I literally I went to the hotel and I put my hand in a bucket of ice water, and I was so happy that I was in pain, because it was like, what a crazy cool experience, and
the validation pain.
Yeah. And because I signed for like almost 3 hours straight, when I got back to the hotel, then I finally caught up on social media, and it was just like bonkers, amazing reviews and photos holding the books, and people with photos where they were at Free Comic Day and it was gone, and they were like hunting for them. Like I was just getting tagged on everything. It was so insane. And then a bunch of people that were like, well, the book can't possibly look like this, like every month. And I was like, get ready, because we already had 4 in the can at that point,
Well, what I like about what you guys do with the 4-story arcs, because I think it gives the artist time to breathe and get more detail down. Like totally. Between him and Doug Braithwaite, 2 different styles. They both represent the Hyborian Age perfectly.
Yeah.
But their art, they have time to put their love into it, and it shows in those arcs.
I was really afraid. I originally, when we were putting together the original plan, I was like, we'll get Rob to do all 12 on the first year. And that going into it, we thought that was going to work. And then we were very quickly like, okay, I would it was a tough decision, honestly, where we were like, do we get Rob to draw 1 to 8, or do we get him to do 1 to 4 and then 9 to 12, and trying to figure that out, and who could possibly, uphold the other story arcs. Like that was sort of the discussion.
Keep the standard up.
Well, that was the thing. So Titan, I think Doug was on Titan's list of potential artists, and Matt sent over some of Doug's stuff, and then Doug was going to do a cover anyways. So sort of like, okay, Doug's going to do a cover. Let's see what his Conan looks like. He draws a great Thor. He draws, badasses. And that cover looked great. And then we sort of floated the idea of, you wouldn't be interested in possibly drawing an issue, would you? And he was like, oh, could I? That would be a dream. We said, what about 4 issues? So it was like this weird kind of a trying to figure out. So, someone just asked on, I think if I do plot with Doug. I don't. That's what's really fascinating about it. I sent Doug a couple of the scripts that I'd written for Rob, and I'm pretty sure Doug wrote back and said, I've worked this way before and I kind of hate it. I would much rather I don't feel comfortable. I don't know Conan like you guys know Conan, or like Rob knows Conan. It's not that he wants to do it, but he just wanted more guidance.
Right.
And he goes, I don't mind changing up the panels. If you tell me it's a 6-panel page, I might make it a 5-panel page with all the same actions. I don't mind making changes where I feel comfortable, but I need more framing on the house. You know what I mean?
Because he wants to do it right.
Right. And I've done full script for almost every other project in my career. So that was easy. So then it was this weird thing where I was doing full script for Doug, and then, plot style, and then a separate lettering script for Rob. So it's 2 very different writing methodologies. But once I did the lettering script for Rob stuff, and I really leaned into the kind of Howardian lyricism, and I did a little bit of it, I think, at Marvel. Like if I reread some of that, every so often there's a pretty good little turn of a phrase, or there's some poetry in there. I think, one of the funny things, I didn't realize how much of a poet Robert E. Howard was, which sounds crazy now because he wrote hundreds of poems, but only a handful of them were actually published before, his passing. There's a sequence in The Gambler where we essentially have a bit of like a song that gets played, and there's a rhyming couplet. When Conan goes berserk and the emerald kind of starts possessing people, and he's killing people in the middle of the gambling hall. And when I was coming up with it, I thought, this feels like a montage, like it needs this lyrical kind of thing. And it was funny that I was actually reticent to do it because I thought it could sound goofy. And that was one of the things that Fred and Jay loved, was that I put, this poetry in the middle of it. And that was one of the qualities that jumped out for them. And so I decided really early on, this, of course, God knows, never going to get a chance like this again. We're getting back to the core, and we get to relaunch this entire publishing line. I mean, I had friends of mine when they announced that I was writing Conan again, who reacted in the weirdest ways, like congratulating me, but almost like, why are you doing this again? Like Titan, like, not that Titan is a bad publisher, but they were just like, it's not Marvel, it's not DC, it's not Image, it's not.
But I was excited when they got it, because knew it was going to get its own perspective.
Well, this is the thing. And now in the rearview mirror, of course, everyone thinks it's, brilliant that it's all worked out so well. But at the time they were just like, oh, it's a much smaller publisher. Oh, and I was trying to explain to them. I said, yeah, but now I'm working directly for the rights holders. It's not a licensing deal. So in a licensing deal, everything gets dealt with by the publisher, and then they're taking the creative work over to the owners, usually a license manager, and then they're providing notes and things like that. Whereas in this is a very unique circumstance where Heroic decided they wanted the creative to be kind of brought in-house. And so they have their own editorial, their own team. So I work directly for the rights holders. Like Chris Butera, my editor on the series, his boss is Fred and Jay, and Fred and Jay are on calls and stuff all the time. I have to convince like 2 people to do something, like, this is a good idea, and here's for these reasons. And this is not a knock on Marvel at all, but obviously, no matter what you do and no matter how popular it is, Marvel doesn't own Conan, and it doesn't own any of the Robert E. Howard character library.
Right.
It's never going to be a priority compared to Spider-Man, compared to the Avengers, compared to Captain America and the X-Men, and even Star Wars, which is, Disney property now, and stuff like that. It's always going to be of a lesser priority. So
that was what excited me about it going to Titan, because for me, my perspective was the only reason for them to get this property is to treat it like a flagship title.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. Heroic, and again, that's not a knock on Marvel. I think that's just basic.
No, they just have too many characters.
Business.
Yeah.
They have too much stuff. And again, there's character has an incredible history at the publisher. Right. It's not like they ever purposely went out of their way to sideline Conan. Yeah. If anything, I think they propagated the character out wider than anyone expected.
Yeah. But of course, they can't do like a Conan movie. So basically, it's not the character they have the power into.
And me creating new stuff doesn't benefit the Marvel Corporation, right? Because they're not going to own it in the end. That's not how that works. At Heroic Signatures, the Robert E. Howard character library is their first and foremost priority, right?
Which is interesting. Do you know about it? Because Shuma Gorath is a Robert E. Howard creation.
That's
and
right.
Marvel even used him when they didn't have the Conan license.
Right.
So was this in a sort of a gray area? Or?
It is a gray area, you know, and so that was one of those things where, yeah, we could talk a little bit about that. It's been a fascinating kind of thing where we very much, the Heroic Signatures owns Shimogarath, the name in particular. And so using that character was something that ended up coming up organically during our sort of story generation, where I knew we wanted to have this big kind of mythic overplot and things that we were going to create in the new series. And this was kind of getting back to some of the things I said before. We have this really unique opportunity with the Titan deal to bring in new readers, to bring back lapsed readers, and to create a very clean and clear starting point, you know, with that number 0, with that issue 1. And so what are we trying to get back to? What is our core, right? So obviously the original Robert E. Howard stories. So did deep, crazy amounts of research on that stuff, both in terms of the content and the plot of those materials, but also the way that Howard, his cadence and the lyricism and that kind of gravitas. But the other thing was the choice that was made, that I made very early on, was we can't just do adaptations. As much as it might make sense with a brand new publishing initiative to go back and do them all, they're readily available and they're going to be reprinted.
Right. And it's still a retread. Right.
And I can never surprise you with Tower of the Elephant, man. Like I love that story. It's an absolute bedrock of the sword and sorcery genre. But I have two options. Either I do faithfully Tower of the Elephant in 1 chapter, in 4 chapters, however I'm going to space that out over to those pages, right? I think Kurt did it in 5 issues, you know, over at Dark Horse, whereas it's been done multiple times in 1 issue at Marvel. But you're never going to be surprised how it finishes. Or I change it, and now the classic readership is like, you just spit on the Mona Lisa. Like, what are you doing? You can't mess with the, you know, classic or whatever. And so you're kind of in this intractable position where you're like, if I do a Robert E. Howard adaptation, I'm straitjacketed, or so I felt. You know, obviously my mind has changed on that with what we did with Frozen Faith. But that was the thought process anyways. And particularly since, you know, Titan was going to be reprinting the original prose stories, and people have access to the stuff, and the Marvel stuff and the Dark Horse stuff is available in reprints. We need to make this appointment reading. We need to be able to surprise the living hell out of readers. We need to be able that they don't know next month what you're going to get. That it feels like the old stuff, the classic stuff, the things you grew up on, but you literally don't know what's going to happen next. That I've still got cards that I can hold close to my chest.
Well, you had me holding on for Brissa's return after that first arc.
Well, that was the thing, and it was so funny. I knew we had something cool with Brissa.
Right, she's not dead.
Well, but we got spoilers. But we got fan mail where people were like, "How dare you kill off this cool character?" And I was just like, man, we didn't show the body.
Well, say they don't know the golden rule. If you don't see it, it doesn't happen.
Yeah.
I love the passion. I love that people were angry, because that meant if it was a throwaway character and no one cared, then
it meant she resonated.
You know, it's like when we did in El Borak, you know, spoilers on Black Stone, when we blew him away, and people were like, "What the hell, man? That guy was cool." I was like, "That's why we took him out, because if you didn't think he was cool, if he was just some nameless schmo or some random person, you wouldn't care." And so for me, that was a sign that we were not trying to piss people off, but that we were creating, you know, bonds, we were creating connections. And I knew, you know, as the commitment that Titan made to me, well, Titan and Heroic, they said no matter what, I would get 12 issues. They had to give it a year to see how it would work. And I built out a longer mythic plan. And at first I was like, okay, but we got to wrap it up. Like if we only get 12, and God knows so many books wrap up at 6 or 12 nowadays, I've got to kind of go in assuming we're going to get more than 12, but have an exit plan. So if you read those first 3 trade paperbacks, if you read 0 to 12, they do form kind of an overarching finished thing. And to the point where the cover of the Free Comic Book Day is Conan on the horse, and it's like, you know, the rising sun. And the last shot that Rob does is Conan on the horse, almost the same angle, riding off into the night. Yeah. Like that is very much like a cohesive narrative unit just in case.
Because when you think about it, this is Roberto also said he wanted to do a Western. Sword and Sorcery and Western are actually very similar, especially the spaghetti Western. You could turn like any spaghetti Western movie into a sword and sorcery.
I mean, Roy did that all the time, where he took a bunch of Howard's Westerns, he took a bunch of the El Borak stories, and he turned them into Conan stories.
Exactly.
Even other authors.
They're not that far off from each other. And the Lone Hero and the Wanderer and the Explorer, they're all very much in that same pulp milieu, right? And so I went in with like, okay, these 12, we got to hit like an atom bomb. Like there's no fat. Every issue's got to be crazy,
right.
you know? And I had those moments. I know a couple people, when issue 5 came out and Doug's first issue comes out and the Blackstone comes back around, because that heist that we do, you know? I know some people are like, dude, we just did Blackstone. That was like issue 1 to 4. Why would you bring Blackstone back in issue 5? It's like, dude, if this was the 80s, I could have 8 unrelated issues in between. I could make you forget about that previous story and then bring it all back. But you would be a regular subscriber and the book would be coming in your mailbox every month. And you'd just be reading and enjoying Conan because it cost you 75 cents.
Right.
And then you'd be delighted that I brought this old plot line back. I don't have any room for that. I can't waste a page and make you feel like you don't go to the store and pick this thing up. So I have to hit every issue like it's an epic. I have to tie it into the big mythic storyline, because if it feels like it's, you know, missable, then it will be, and then we're dead in the water. And I'll never make that mistake again. You know, this is such an important book to me. This is such an opportunity.
Grounds, basically.
Well, not only that, I mean, it's the most, no one gets to write these characters, not no one, but you know what I mean? Like iconically, very few people get to write these characters. Who the hell gets to do it twice? Like, and after they failed, like ostensibly speaking, business-wise, right? And so if I could blame COVID, I could blame whatever. I was issue 13 instead of a new number 1. I was this, I was that. If I get a new number 1 and I get a brand new publishing initiative and I get the artist that I wanted and I still fail, well, then that's on me. That's the, you
really got to own it.
Yeah. What, like, holy pie on my face. What a failure am I if I couldn't make those? You gave me everything I asked for and I face planted on it. Okay. Now it's on me. Right. And so I had pressure. I had a deep amount of, you know, fear and pressure and stress around the book in a good way, the kind that motivates you and you know, makes. And when that 0 came out, I felt like, okay, I know we can do it. And then the order numbers came in for 1. And after Free Comic Day, they leapt up insane numbers.
I do have one question, you know, with like, it's a little bit unrelated to Conan, but still, of course, Hyborian Age.
Yeah.
Unbreakable Red Sonja, what went wrong?
Oh, that's more complicated. So can I come back around on that?
Of course.
I'll come back around on that. It was, I mean, that was a weird situation in and of itself, because, you know, Dynamite has the rights to Red Sonja, and Red Sonja is and is not. She's like Schrodinger's Robert E. Howard character. Like, she is and is not a Robert E. Howard character.
In comics, she's more of
she's a Roy Thomas character.
She's a Roy Thomas creation, and she's in the Hyborian Age and allowed to run around the Hyborian Age, but the license is also separate in the sense that the two
and I know, like with the Lieberman, like when he sold off the Conan but kept the Red Sonja, and his son now is the rights, and
it's complicated.
Is doing her thing.
It's complicated. And Dynamite's got a different, you know, Dynamite has got a whole different publishing model and things like that. And again, I get along really well with those guys. They announced that I was going to be coming back and doing Conan at Titan, which again surprised a whole bunch of people. Years ago, I had done a one-shot for Red Sonja, and it was a lot of fun. I'm going in like 10 different directions with things I want to talk about. I need to roll back to one particular piece, because I was starting to go into this, and then I got into the weeds. I have to give huge credit to Matt Murray, my editor on the first run of the Titan books, and Jeff Shanks. So, you know, Jeff Shanks got brought on board, and he was just going to write an essay in the Free Comic Day issue, welcoming people to, you know, the Titan series and telling them about Robert E. Howard and Conan. And that essay that he did in the Free Comic Day issue was so good. And I felt like really gave us a narrative gravity that was important. And so I asked if we could keep Jeff on and have him do more essays. And they were like, sure. I think it was, they said like the first 4 issues, you know, while we're establishing ourselves. And then he does those 4. And then I sent him an email and I was like, okay, here's the essay for issue 5. And he sidebars me and he goes, Jim, I'm not contracted to do essays for issue 5. I said, just do it. Everyone loves the book. Just do it. And so he just kept writing essays and, you know, we just turned it into a rolling thing. He has to be in every issue. He's part of that team, you know. And Matt brought he did a lot of heavy reading on the series, and we would get on these phone calls and we would brainstorm a bunch of stuff. And then Jeff and I would get on calls and back and forth. And Jeff was so good about, he's like an improv guy. He's not an improv guy in real life, but it was like he was an improv guy, that idea of yes and. So I would go, I want to do things like this with the mythology, or I want to come at it from this angle, or these are the themes I want to exemplify. And he would always go, yes, that's a great idea for these reasons. Did you know that Howard wrote a story like this? Or did you know in one of his letters to Lovecraft, he talked about this? Or did you know? And so he could always bring me more literary heft to almost every idea that I was trying to come up with, or things that I was throwing against the wall. And then he would go, that sticks, that sticks, that sticks. And he bolstered my confidence and gave me so much support and excitement. You know, Matt was the same way. He was just like, when the artwork started coming in from Rob, he goes, this is the work of your career. And I was like, don't talk like that. And he goes, no, it is. You're doing it. I can feel it. It's crackling through the keyboard. I want more. I want more. And he was like pushing and pushing and pushing to make this thing the really special launch that it was, you know? And so I feel like, I've learned so much about the character and about the world by doing the Marvel books. I got this incredible, unique opportunity. Yes, my pitch made it through the gauntlet and I, whatever, earned it. But the team really makes this something special. You know, the art teams are absolutely phenomenal. You know, Richard Starkings, the guy who pioneered digital lettering in the comic book industry, came to us and said he wanted to letter this book because he was so excited. Because
the lettering is fantastic, but also the coloring is amazing.
The coloring is phenomenal. Everyone we've had, Jose Villarrubia and Dean White and Diego Rodriguez, you know, João Canola, and just like everyone's working so hard. Our assistant editor, Ashley Hodgkins, she really is the person who's managing between, especially something like Savage Sword, where you have dozens of artists submitting pinups and proposals and keeping this thing on track. And this story's not going to come in when we thought it was. Now we have a gap. Who are we slotting in there? The contracts and schedules. Ashley's the first assistant editor that I've ever had that asked me to send her my convention schedule so that they wouldn't bother me while I'm on the road unless it was absolutely necessary. And it's like, what? Like, that doesn't happen. Like, that's just not normal.
That's a possibility.
It's incredible, right? So we are always, you know, when we get on a call, we're just going down this checklist of, okay, do you want to check over these sketches, or let's look at this stuff, or let's look at the broader schedule, or particularly right now with the Diamond distribution, you know, disintegration. Okay, this book is moving off the schedule here. We've got a little bit more room. We need solicit text for the catalog. You know, Chris is getting done On the Road of Kings, which is the little text that reminds you what happened last issue. Like, there's all these little things that seem very inconsequential. Someone's got to send the map over. This is the part of the map we're circling. Is this correct still? Yes. This is what's happening. This is what Jeff's writing. Has someone copy edited it? Is it the right word count? It's just 100 little things that need to get done. And when it's done properly, you just take it all for granted. But when you're seeing, you know, the craziness on a monthly title where a new issue is going off to press every 4 weeks, it becomes this incredible machine that just rolls and rolls and rolls. And when we have multiple artists, each on their own schedules, Doug is going to take X amount of time to draw an issue, or Rob or Diego or Fernando, you know, like coloring and drawing, and like, it is an insane amount of stuff to keep.
But it adds so much value to the title.
It does, because we're able to give those artists the room that they need. You know, the ultimate example of that is coming up right now. I could talk about it. It's so amazing. Conan number 25 is going to be this big oversized celebration issue. Very vindicating and exciting. And Alex Horley, who normally is known for his covers, is painting the whole book.
Right, I can't wait for it.
Oh my
So
God.
Alex is painting over 30 story pages plus a wraparound cover. I got him we started production on it in late September, early October. And so of last year, because I knew it was going to take him like 9 months to paint 30, 40 paintings, like oil paintings. They're not digital.
Wow.
And he started sending me sketches for new design stuff that was going to be in there. And it's my first King Conan story. And so we wanted to do this epic, and we wanted it to be this self-contained story that if you've never read Conan before, you can sort of drop in and get a sense of epic sword and sorcery. And if you love the character and you lapsed and for whatever reason the previous 24 issues didn't grab you, for the love of God, this is going to really be a special one. And this is going to, you know, make you sit up and take notice.
Painted art is a part of Conan history. It's so amazing, from
gorgeous.
The Earl Norm and
yeah, and it's the kind of thing that the character deserves. And I knew we could do it if we had enough lead time. And so we started we were trying to figure out who the right artist would be. And then Alex just seemed like such a natural fit because he was doing these phenomenal covers. And we sort of put are you interested in doing this? Absolutely crazy. Man, I don't know how much those are going to cost. I know one of the reasons why Alex agreed to do it is also because I'm sure he's going, not to sound crass, he's going to make a mint selling the original art for the book.
Sure is.
So normally with many of the artists, I will get gifted a page from a story arc as a thank you. I buy some as well. So Rob gifted me the splash page from issue 3, which is Conan and Brissa entering the cave of the Citadel of Blackstone. And then I bought like 3 other pages from him because I really wanted to have them. Doug gifted me a beautiful page from issue 5. So anytime there's a traditional artist, I do like having a piece. But I also it's not fair for me to ask that of Alex to say, hey, thousands of dollars that you would get for this thing easily. Hey, just give me one. You know what I mean? That's not cool.
Right.
Yeah.
That being said, like I have bought, so you know, if I can make the finances work.
Hey, you got a sword though.
I did. I got a sword yesterday. I got the cover that Eric Gist did for my first issue of the monthly. So I own the cover to issue 13 of the Marvel run, the one where Conan's standing with all the spikes on the skulls and all that stuff. So every time that Heroic uses that or they announce whatever, you know, Arnold mentioned he wants to do a movie or something, that art gets thrown up and I just laugh because I'm like, you guys are just making this more valuable. That literally is framed in my living room. You know, it's very nice to have. So I don't know. Short answer, I guess, on getting a piece of art. I don't want to assume or presume anything about Alex's work. I also don't know what he's going to charge for it or if he's going to do it on auction or whatever. And that's his right to do so.
Right.
I'm trying to give him as many big, insane moments that this thing is going to be one for the ages. That's what we're trying to do is make
now,
this.
You guys surprised me with these last 2 issues.
Yeah.
Because you introduced over there one of my favorite characters, which I didn't know you had the rights to, which is
yeah. We have everything Conan. So we have any character that showed up first in the Marvel books, we've got access to, right? So that's not the first or only character that we're going to be digging in. Some of them are known and some of them are very obscure, but I just think they're fun. And so I can recontextualize them as I see fit. And because of things like, you know, the Atlantean sword, we have rights to all the movie stuff as well. So putting that in as a bit of an kind of throwback Easter egg or just accepting that is part and parcel now of Conan iconography, that people know that sword incredibly well thanks to the movie, you know, or little. I'm never going to. The movie is amazing as a piece of entertainment, and it's, you know, of course it's not accurate to the vast majority of the
right. And we talk about that a lot. It's
yeah,
a mix of different Howard properties. It's not
right.
Film.
Thing. But on the other hand, it, you know, Kryptonite wasn't part of the original Superman stories, and neither was Jimmy Olsen or the Daily Planet. And I don't think you could argue that any of those those are not Superman in the modern era. And so I'm not saying that I want to have Conan growing up with his mother getting killed and the Wheel of Pain and all that sort of stuff. But as long as it doesn't directly conflict with the Howard canon, I don't think there's anything wrong with having an Atlantean sword. I don't think there's anything wrong with someone mentioning the Riddle of Steel. Not that his father's saying it per se, or that it's intrinsic to who he is as a person, but that it can, those words and those ideas have become part of the greater pop culture legend of Conan. And that if you
read
use
Howard,
it
just any sort of
carefully,
hands on.
and I think Zula's one of those things too. Like Zula's one of those things that is not only in a cool part of the comics, but did show up in Destroyer and does have a bit of name cachet. And so for me, it feels like there is a way to respectfully bring that into the momentum without breaking it and without, pissing off the hardcore. I mean, there's certain people that are understandably, and it's fine too. Like they, in their minds, they're basically like the original Robert E. Howard stories are the only Conan. Everything else, including Frazetta, including the comics, including the video games, all of it is not. Dude, that's cool. I am genuinely fine with that, because at the end of the day, your fandom is your own and you're going to do it your way. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like,
but also I always say is like you should never care about people that you can't reach anyway.
Well, that's the thing. They're never going to buy that comic. I've had people literally tell me, they're like, the minute John Buscema stopped drawing it, or Barry or whatever, they stopped collecting. You're like, okay, like I think we've got something here for you, but I can't drag you, to the water and force you to drink. Like at some point, I've been amazed at the old fandom that has come out. Like I remember New York Comic Con 2023, we'd launched the new series. We only had like 2 issues out by that point because we launched in July. And I had 3 or 4 of these guys old enough to be my dad coming over, heartfelt, shake my hand, tell me how much it meant to them to be reading Conan. And they felt like they were 15 again. And that was really amazing. You really feel a part of that legacy. By the time we got to March for Emerald City Comic Con 2024, I had 50 of those guys in Seattle. Like, I'm not exaggerating. I had over and over retailers and readers, guys who said, I haven't collected Conan in 25 years. I haven't collected Conan in 30 years. I haven't had a pull file at a store in over a decade. This is the book. This is the book that gets me in every single month on release day. I'm angry when the book ships late because how dare you? That's how excited they are. And then we announced, we're bringing Savage Sword back and everything else. And that was like the core, they wanted it so bad. And
hey, Jim,
an amazing
what did Roy Thomas say about it?
About what? About
your book?
Oh, man. I mean, but you got to keep in mind, I met Roy before any of the Titan stuff, right? So I haven't met Roy since the Titan launch. I met Roy in the most bizarre of circumstances. I was in this before I took over the monthly. I was at Paris Comic-Con, so I went to France. Rick and Morty Dungeons and Dragons was coming out in French, and they brought me out for the launch at Paris Comic-Con, October 2019. They think they have enough books for the whole weekend, and we sell out in like 2 to 3 hours. Like, it was just nuts. And so they're madly calling their distributor, trying to get more copies shipped to the convention. And I'm just got nothing to do. Like, I walk over to the Panini booth, and they've got a couple no surrender trade paperbacks. Like, it takes me like 20 minutes. I've signed everything in the convention center I can find with my name on it. I got nothing to do. I'm just wandering around the show. And Roy's one of the guests of honor, and he's got a huge line, like 2.5 hour line, just to shake his hand and get a book signed, and CGC reps in the whole 10 yards. And I was like, man, I know now I'm going to be writing Conan at Marvel, but it hasn't been officially announced yet. I really want to talk to him. I really want to meet him. That would be so cool. And it's one of those rare circumstances where I kind of pulled rank. So, when you're a guest at the convention, they have a rep for you from the convention. He's the one arranging your badge and your hotel and your flight and all your stuff. And so I just called the French rep, and I was like, hey, man, can you do me a solid? I really want to meet Roy Thomas. And I don't want to wait 2.5 hours to do 10 seconds in a handshake, because that's just going to be weird, and it's not fair to everyone else in line.
Right.
And he goes, no, it'd be my absolute pleasure. It'd be an honor. Let me set it up. And so he calls me back and he's like, tomorrow before the show starts, before his first signing time, meet us backstage or whatever. And I was like, great. And so we meet there and he was great. We had a wonderful conversation, back and forth. And I said to him how much his work meant to me and growing up on Conan and all that stuff. And then I said, I'm written some Conan. And he said, oh, have you now? And he said, what have you written? And I said, oh, Mr. Thomas, it's all brand new stuff. You wouldn't have read it. And he goes, no. Mark, the editor, Mark Basso, the editor at Marvel, he's bringing me back to do a story for King Size Conan because he was doing that story with Steve McNiven. And he goes, he sent me a box with everything that they published so far for the new stuff. And I read it all. And I was like, of course you did, because Roy's like just super research hound, and I started to get nervous. I said, well, I did this 3-part story in Savage Sword called The Gambler. Conan's in a gambling hall. And he goes, oh, The Gambler. I read it. I liked it. And I was just like, okay. And I didn't know how to respond and then he starts telling me what he liked about it and how it felt like a Howard story and where the good turns were. So not only did he read it, he really read it. He wasn't just blowing smoke.
Right, he absorbed it.
He remembered it and he liked it. And I could feel these like tingles, like I was getting freaked out in the best way possible. Like my hairs were standing on end as he's telling me what he liked about it and how it felt, like a real Conan story. And I said, well, I really, really appreciate hearing that, sir. I have some really good news. I'm going to be taking over as the flagship writer on the series. And he looks at me and he goes, is that so? And I was just like, is this positive? Is this negative? I don't know what to think. And he slaps a hand on my shoulder and he goes, welcome to the fraternity.
Wow. Man, sworn in by the master.
Man, I vaguely remember the rest of the conversation, and we have a photo of the two of us, and I look so giddy. I look absolutely stupid in the photo because I'm so happy. And I walk away from that little meetup, and I go back to my booth, and my wife's there, and she looks at me, and I'm gonna swear, is that okay?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. She goes, are you fucking high? Because I had that freaking. I was just like, no, no. I swear to God, it's all natural. It's adrenaline. I'm like, King Arthur just knighted me. This is the craziest shit ever. We were just laughing and laughing about it. And that was October 2019. That was the last show that I did in 2019. The first show I was going to do in 2020 was Emerald City Comic-Con. And then the show got canceled because of lockdowns and COVID and everything else. So for a while there, that was the last convention I thought I would ever do. Like I thought maybe, again, I know it seems very dramatic, but maybe there's no more comic conventions. Maybe there's no more comic publishing. But what a crazy final show to have done and what an experience to have where you meet one of your heroes and they're pretty cool, So yeah, it was a really, really special thing. So Roy and I were supposed to both be at Cross Plains in 2020. We were both supposed to do Howard Days because that was the 50th anniversary of Conan #1. And I had a new, Conan run that I was doing at the time. And then of course it got put off. So I didn't end up going to Howard Days until last year, until 2024. So I haven't seen Roy since then.
How was the sense of history when you were there? Could you feel it?
The original typewriter and everything.
What's incredible about, if you read those intros to the Savage Sword omnibuses, that dude took the most meticulous notes about literally what he was doing every day at the office. He can tell you everything. He remembers working with all the different artists and everything. He is just he is a font of history. It is pretty phenomenal. Rereading some of the essays and stuff too in the old Savage Sword, he's the editor on the book. He loves the history of the work and he loves the kind of archaeology that's involved in finding out the Howard stuff. And even though he was taking some of those stories and filing the serial numbers off and turning cowboy stories into Conan stories, it's done with a loving air of trying to make this, feel legit. Yeah, man, it's really, really.
He's a master of adaptation. It's not an easy art. If you adapt, you're lazy. No, adapting is difficult.
The new one that he just did with Rob in issue 7 of Savage Sword, and when he talks about writing on that, I was talking to Chris about it, our editor, and he was, saying how it felt like the old days because he was writing outline style, and that's where Rob feels most comfortable. And Rob in some ways, Rob doesn't have an ego about this stuff. He isn't like, oh my God, I'm doing a story for Roy Thomas. He's just like, let's make this the most badass story ever. So he was throwing ideas into the pot and visual things. And Roy was like, that's cool. You know, like whatever makes for the coolest issue. Like, let's, you know, as long as it's not something that doesn't feel Howard, let's go for it, you know? And so it's been, I think all of us just feel a real sense of pride and knowing that the legacy of the character, you know, is continuing and ever onward. And you get to be at this moment, whatever metaphor I want to use. I got my hand on the steering wheel. I got the baton. I'm running in the marathon. For now, I'm trying to make the most of it and make it as special as possible. And weirdly, I'm going to get back to, I said I was going to talk about it. I didn't forget the Red Sonja stuff. So I had done a Red Sonja one shot back in the day. This is right around the same time that Gail asked me if I wanted to do the Conan Red Sonja, because she knew I loved the Howard stuff. And I had done this one shot special of of Red Sonja. And I had followed up with the editor of Red Sonja. And I said, man, if you guys, I know you guys are relaunching that book, not to sound crass, you're relaunching that book all the time. Like there's been a lot of Red Sonja #1s.
Yeah, it's too many.
You know,
too many
and one of the things that's beneficial of that is that each writer has been able to sort of carve out and make the character their own and do their own thing. And I said I would do a very kind of classic take with a bit of a, you know, like it would feel Howardian, and we would very much set it in the Hyborian age, and it would be brutal and all this kind of stuff.
And with
Gail's got her own thing that she did, and I think she did a wonderful job with it. But mine would be different and hearkening a little bit earlier. But I would be up for it anytime. I told her I'd be up for up for Red Sonja anytime. And they would always come to me and they would sort of say, well, we've got this other writer who's going to be doing the regular monthly book. Do you want to do like a mini series crossed over with some other, you know, Dynamite property? I don't remember all of them, but I probably was approached about 5 or 6 times. And I said, I don't want to do a crossover. I don't want to do, and it's not that those books are terrible, but that's just not the way I look at it. I really want, you know, doing Conan and the Avengers was right on the cusp of, you know, where I kind of feel like you can go with this stuff. I don't want to do Red Sonja meets whatever, Army of Darkness. Tim Seeley's doing a great job on that book right now. Great. I don't want to do Red Sonja, whatever, fights Godzilla or fights aliens or like, right. Just, not to say you can't do that, but that's not where my head's at. And that's not what I'm passionate about. And so every time they would come to me and they would say, will you do this? I would say, no. I said, if you ever want to just give me the pure Red Sonja, then I'll do it. And right after they announced I was taking over the Titan book, lo and behold, they called me up and they were just like, oh, so you're the Howard guy. And I was like, well, yeah, we got some ambitious plans. You know, we'd really love for you to do Red Sonja. And I was just like, oh, now? Like of all the time,
right?
Want me to do it? And so now I needed to sort of reverse course and say, I can't do an ongoing. I've got to do a self-contained story. And so I sort of said, you know, all these different characters have had different creative teams have had all their different takes. Is there a way for me to ratify a bunch of them on the character's 50th anniversary, set a new sort of baseline and then set it loose? And that was the original plan for that book. And editorial and everyone worked really hard, and it was a real mess. Like it was a really hard book to get pulled together, and the creative team and the art team and the scheduling and the writing and all of it. And so I'm really proud of what we were able to do. I think that there's some really cool ideas in there, and I feel like when it works well, and there's parts of it that are messy. And that's just, sometimes that's comic production. And you can, you know, I don't wash my hands of it in the sense of I'm proud of the book and I'm glad that people like it. And when they bring it to me, of course, I'll autograph it. But the ambition was definitely broader than what ended up on the page in some cases. The one thing I did do, which was a bit of a selfish indulgence, at the very end of that story, the new villain that we created, she gets cast sort of off through time and dimensions. And there's a cameo where she shows up in the Ottoman Wars. And
in Vienna, it's like...
she meets Red Sonja of Rogatino. And that was totally just an indulgent thing that I did, because at some point in time, if I get the chance to write every Howard character in some way, shape, or form, I can say I wrote them all. Maybe one panel, maybe one line of dialogue. But I got Rogatino, and so she doesn't get excised from that list, you know.
Because
But
I'm from Austria. I want
Yeah.
that. I want
sure,
that.
man.
Yeah.
But and you know, people have asked me about whether I would do a sequel because we seem to tee it up or things like that. It's not in the cards right now, but like I said, I think the character's cool. I think there's some fun stuff. But that's not where my head's at. And obviously I've got more than enough stuff on my plate right now between doing the monthly title, which is, you know, depending on how we're usually 3 different art teams that I'm working with, 2 to 3 different art teams, plus the event book, plus Savage Sword. And now I'm starting to get involved in some of the media potential adaptation where I'm a consultant on other potential projects. So
yeah, we need a Conan cartoon, TV series,
anything in that sort of milieu. There's
lunchbox. We need a lunchbox.
Yeah, right. But it's like I'm not art directing or things like that. That's still a licensing deal. But in terms of like the creative or the storytelling, you know,
more Dark Agnes.
I've got a place to. I've got, you know, I'm seeing what's coming down the pipe, or I'm excited about what's there, or I'm sort of, you know, helping to shepherd some of that stuff in various capacities. And it's a real honor. It's an amazing thing. And so, that's kind of the Robert E. Howard character library and being able to boost that as much as I can. Obviously, Conan's the central pillar of the whole thing. But I think what I'm really excited about now is that, like, the Solomon Kane miniseries is doing well, so that it proves,
Searcher, that's a beautiful series.
And again, it's about finding the right people who are the best compliment that I got. We were talking about, you know, the various characters, and they were saying, you know, Zurcher is our Zub, you know, for Solomon Kane. And I go, what do you mean? Like, he's passionate and he's committed long-term and he wants to build things. And I was like, wow, you're using my name like a verb.
Like, it feels like you're reading Howard Solomon Kane through Zurcher.
Well, this is what's great about it. And so we need to find those creators who are passionate about whatever, you know, El Barak, or not that every single one of them is going to be able to sustain a regular monthly book. Like, that's just not realistic, you know?
Right.
One of the things that was really intrinsic about our publishing plan when we started, as I said, the monthly book has to be rock solid. We have to prove our bona fides. We have to prove that we've earned your $4 a month every month for 12 months before we launch anything else. Because if you don't, you know, one of the problems I see a lot of these publishers, they'll try and bring a line of books out at the same time. Dude, getting $4 out of someone's wallet every month is difficult enough. Telling them, good news, 4 new books are coming out. You're like, you haven't proven one book. Why would I spend
right?
Why would I spend whatever $16 a month before I've seen page 1?
You know? Don't make it too pricey for the common customer to collect your properties.
That's why we did the free comic book day. Literally, the bar to entry $0, right? Mm-hmm. And we made it digital, you know, free everywhere on Kindle and everything else. So now the bar to entry $0. Do we earn your $4? Hopefully that free comic book day said issue 1 is worth it. Issue 1 to 4, worth it. 5 to 8, worth it. Okay, now we've got a legacy of success over multiple months. What's the next step? Well, everyone keeps telling us Savage Sword is the you know, classic. We were coming up on the 50th anniversary of it. It's a weird format. It's magazine sized. It's black and white newsprint. Everyone says they want this, but man, all the time I'll see artwork online and someone will say, you should make that a t-shirt or you should make that a poster. And those guys will do that and then no one buys it. So it's all well and good to say, we want old school Savage Sword. You're like, prove it, like money on the table. And people proved it. You know, we gave them as pure a reading experience as we could. You know, Joe Jusko on his first Conan cover in 25 years. What a phenomenal experience that has been, to bring some of these old school artists back and writers and people.
And that book's been getting better every issue.
And it was like we promised 6 issues and then you guys bought it. So we'll do more. So year 2, we're guaranteed up to 12. Great. I want to do 18. I want to do 24. So does Heroic. So does Titan. But we can't do it just because we say we want to do it. Those are expensive books to produce. Yeah. Particularly, look at the page count. Like, the amount of content that you're getting every issue is nuts. Like, it is a lot of stuff. Yeah. And so, and you're paying, dude, you don't get Liam Sharp for cheap. You don't get Rob Del Toro. You don't get, you know, these guys are top tier artists. And you're not just asking for 20 pages. It's 36, 48 pages. Like, and the time involved in it. These take a long time to produce. So we've got to have we're future proofing it. Who's available? What's the schedule? How are we putting it together? You know what I mean? So, for example, it's also an amazing place because there's some short stories where we can test people out. So Fernando Dagnino came recommended to us, and I was like, I've never seen this guy's stuff before. Seems nice, looks cool. We did that short story in 10 pages in issue 4. He absolutely blew me away. All the cavemen killing each other and all the madness.
It was beautiful.
That dude understood the assignment. He understood that this was a unique opportunity for him to be part of a book that has a phenomenal artistic legacy, A, and B, he could get on our radar, and then he could get in the bullpen.
And his shading work just was he understood how to do shading work for the black and white print.
Yeah. So he went from I've never heard of this guy to when do I get to work with him again? Like it was that simple. You know what I mean? And so all of a sudden now the bench is getting deeper. Now I got Fernando. Okay. Fernando came to us and we were talking to Doug, and Doug's, really wanted to design Zula and bring Zula back. So we were slotting that in to make it work. So we're like, okay, where can we put another artist? How can we make this fit? Then we got Danica came in and we were like, okay, we got that. That'll get us over the gap of those 2 issues. But we need someone who's going to become in the regular rotation. Rob's doing Savage Sword stuff. He's doing these longer stories in the black and white. He's not going to be available for the monthly book right now. Okay. Who steps in? Well, Fernando proved himself. All right, Fernando, we're going to give you this assignment. 4 issues, and they're going to be ambitious. Dude, I cannot properly explain to you how crazy it is. Issue 21 looks good. It looks really good. It's nothing. 23 is like, this guy goes into overdrive. I cannot believe it.
Oh, you got me excited for this.
So good, dude. And then it's like, all right, great. Now we've got Fernando. We're really cooking. And I thought we had everything sort of nailed down with the event books because Jonas did Blackstone. He did a phenomenal job on that book. We had a wonderful time. He just juggled those time periods and those characters. As soon as he finished Blackstone, Marvel got him on an exclusive contract. I don't want to say, like, that's cool, man. It's Marvel.
Yeah, I mean, it's great for him.
Amazing. He's doing stuff over in their Ultimate Universe. He's a killer artist. I'm super proud of him. But I thought he was going to be our event guy. So I thought we were going to have him doing each miniseries each year. And we were up for whatever number of years. So I'm like, okay, I got to find somebody else. We got to hunt. We got to look around. Ivan literally came to us. So he reached out to me through Instagram. And he's like, I'm this artist. I'm this Spanish artist. Grew up on Conan, like so many other guys here. I'm working in the French market. He did these Napoleonic War bande dessinée, these beautiful oversized graphic novels. They're crazy. And he sent me his samples of his stuff, horses and muskets, guys crashing into each other. Wow. And I was just like, this is nuts. This is beautiful. And he said, it's a dream of mine to do a pinup for Savage Sword. Are you guys interested? And I sent his stuff over to Chris and I was like, do you just want to pin up from this guy? Like, I think we could. And he goes, well, he must be busy. And I said, I don't know. And so we just started talking back and forth. And I said, how about a cover? And he was like, yeah, I would love to. I'd love to. I go, what's on your schedule? He goes, well, I'm finishing this last French graphic novel. And then I'm going to go out and show my portfolio. I said, well, you just showed your portfolio to us. And he goes, is it possible? Could I do a Savage Sword story? And I said, no, I want you to do like potentially this event book, but it's going to be 4 issues plus a free comic book day. And he's like, let me get back to you. And then he said, I need this much time. I just got to wrap up my previous commitments. And it was tight, but we were like, we can make it work. Right. But we need to get you in now. Like we need to get, make a commitment and everything else. And he has just been, you saw that free comic day is just nuts.
Gorgeous.
That guy draws unbelievable environments. You really feel like you're part of this.
You guys are the only free comic book day that I order ahead of time on eBay, so I don't miss it.
It's killer. Like, and again, I got those pages in and I was just like, are you nuts? Like we're adding this other dude to the bench. He's so good. And the funniest thing was I was already talking to Rob about going to Spain. I was like, when do we get to hang out? Because I've never met him in person. And he was just like, well, you got to come to Spain because I don't like to travel. And I was like, well, I'm coming to Spain. And then it was just the funniest thing because Fernando Dagnino is in Spain. And so is Ivan Gill. All 3 of them are in Spain.
Nice.
And then Alberto Albuquerque, who's another artist who's a friend of mine, he lives there. Pepe Larraz, who I worked with on Avengers, is there. So at the end of the month, I'm going to Spain for 5 days, and we're just going to like hang out and have a few drinks and laugh and chill. It's going to be wonderful. I am so excited. We're doing 2 signings. We're signing at a comic book shop called Art 9, and then we're signing at a big bookstore, anime store called Omega Center. Both of them are in downtown Madrid. And I cannot wait to meet the Spaniards and all the Spanish readers.
You got to post some good pictures of that.
I think Spain, along with Italy, are probably the 2 biggest Conan fan countries.
Oh yeah, there's massive. And so already we've been getting tons of private messages and people super excited. They asked us if there were a limit to the number of books. Such a Pinoy history.
I'd like to see some more of that too.
Yeah, man, it's gonna be awesome. One of the things we're gonna do is we're gonna take a day trip out to some of the ruins and stuff as well. I just really want to see the sights and see the countryside, and it's gonna be so cool. I'm so pumped, and I'm so fortunate. Like the Conan books in 11 languages now.
Wow. That's
which
crazy.
Is nuts. It's like it's an absolute world beater. Savage Sword's doing really well. Like all the things we hoped in terms of the expansion of the publishing line and the passion that we hope we could bring some of the older fans back, and just new readers coming on board and feeling like they can really grab hold of this thing. Some of the video game fans who've been playing Conan Exiles or Age of Conan, that they feel like they can jump in and read this stuff now and have a greater context for it. All of it. It feels incredibly special. And the biggest reason why is because it's not this. Again, I am so thankful that I've been able to do whatever Avengers while Infinity War was coming out, or Rick and Morty D&D during the Rick and Morty craze, or Stranger Things Dungeons and Dragons while Stranger Things was on that meteoric explosion. Those are incredibly fortunate and very cool things to be a part of. But you are always aware that it's the media that is driving the interest, and you are a sometimes very well-regarded portion of it, but it wouldn't exist without those things. Do you know what I mean? And yes, I am part of the broader, 90 plus year legacy of Conan publishing and the incredible work of Robert E. Howard and the work of Frank Frazetta and John Buscema and Roy Thomas and Barry Windsor Smith and Carrie Nord and Kurt Busiek and hundreds of other people have contributed to it. But not a lot of people were talking about Conan when we relaunched in 2020.
Oh, exactly.
There was no new video game. There was no new movie. There was no TV show or animation. The reason why the book is popular right now is because of the work that we are doing. And that feels so special and so precious and so different from every other thing that I've done. And I am so incredibly thankful.
If only you make it possible that
that's the thing.
Can again in other media.
Right. When we talk to other media people now, and they are talking about the comic, the reason why I'm on these calls is because they want me to be involved because of the comic. Do you know what I mean? So it's the sharp tip of the spear at the front of this incredible charge, and I get to be the person who is, setting the narrative tone for that. But none of it's possible without the team. None of it's possible without the support from Titan or Heroic, that they trust me, that they trust our crew, that they're putting the muscle behind it. But all of that, again, feeds off of you guys reading, supporting the book, buying it, sharing it with others, sharing your enthusiasm. It's this really cool ecosystem of entertainment and publishing and excitement in a way that I have never had in my career. As like literally this bookshelf right here, it goes off camera both ways. This narrow bookshelf is all my books. So these are books I've written. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 shelves of them, foreign editions and omnibuses, but just trade paperbacks. I've written over 70 graphic novels in my career. Okay. Never had a book like this. Never had a book like Conan. Never had readers like this. Never had passion like this. It's very, very special, and it means the world to me. So yeah. Other than that, nothing.
You and the team have nailed it. You guys have. You guys have shown it respect, and when you've added to it, it's been in ways that fit in. I'll never claim that we're perfect. I never claim that we're always going to get it, 100% right.
but I will tell you always, 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 it's done with the utmost passion. It's done with the utmost, hard work and respect. And we're harder on ourselves than anything that you see in the public eye. You know what I mean? Like when there's a mistake or when someone calls out something, we've already talked about it. Like
right.
It went to print. You're just like, what? How did
You've already gave yourself your lashings, huh?
We did, but I can always tell you, I warned Titan. We had this crazy moment because the order numbers were so nuts. We did 6 printings of issue 1. We did 3 printings of issue 2 and 3, 2 printings of issue 4, 5. Like those numbers for Titan were just gargantuan. The book was selling more than when Marvel launched it, in 2018 or 2019. Or it was just bonkers, absolutely bonkers. And I told them, I said, this is the honeymoon period. Like once year 2, we got to be ready for, once people start to take the monthly book for granted, we're going to get more complaints because someone's going to be like, well, sure, but issue 3 was better, or I liked Free Comic Day 2023 better than 2024 or whatever. And it's not that we don't get any complaints, but they're so few and far between that I keep joking. I'm like, okay, the honeymoon period is going to end. And then we're on a call and they go, man, we're still honeymooning as far as I can tell. I'm like, I think so. Like we're coming up on year 3 and we're still honeymooning. I don't know how that works exactly. If anything, we've got this reverse where, whoop, I just dropped my headphone there. Oh, there we go. Issue 12 was coming out and I got multiple messages from people that were like, please don't stop the book. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like I've already written issue 18. Like, but in their heads, they just assumed that the book's going to reset because you do 12 issues and you get a new number 1.
But that's how we're conditioned these days, right? Because
I had it last night. I had it last night. So because Diamond distribution, is crumbling and we're shifting over to different distributors, there's a gap. We've had multiple gaps. We had a gap in January and we're going to have another gap in June. So in May, we were supposed to have the Free Comic Book Day issue and issue 21 coming out. In the Free Comic Book Day issue, it says 21's coming out in May. Now it's coming out in June because of all the distribution stuff. We'd already printed the Free Comic Book Day. Nothing we could do about it.
Right.
But because the book wasn't in the catalog for June, we had a bunch of people go, oh, book's been canceled. You're just like, whoa. We're fine. We're perfectly fine. Like I've finished writing issue 28. I've got outlines through the 30s. Like we're fine. The book is,
and keep the numbering. Keep the numbering.
Again, as long as you guys buy it, as long as the support's there, we've talked at length about this. Heroic and Titan understand the diminishing returns that can come from hitting that reset button.
Yeah, because Purge speaks in high volumes of you, and he rightfully always says this gimmick is a jumping off point.
Well, and there was a time when you can hit that button and you could get a sustained sales bump that lasted. But now, because the gimmick's been overkilled, you'll get one issue and then right back down, or sometimes worse than your original numbers. And the reason why is because they're finding that people are seeing it as a jumping off point as much as a jumping on point. They go, oh, there's 20 issues. Well, now I'm done. I got the complete 20 issue. I was already kind of losing faith, so I'm done. And you're like, no. As far as I'm concerned, like I would like to keep that numbering going. Like I want to be on the book as long as humanly possible.
Roy Thomas did 100. So
well, sure, but I mean, we're in a different era as well. So I am ostensibly planned out and signed on for 50 issues. So that'll carry me through 2027. And each year we're going to have an event miniseries, usually going to run in the fall. So the format, as long as it continues to work, is, if Free Comic Book Day still exists, who knows? But Free Comic Book Day, we do like the Blackstone book, September, October, November, December. There's the Blackstone miniseries that runs parallel to the monthly book. You can read the monthly book and you don't get any time shenanigans, but we're setting the table for the big mythic stuff that comes in the later stuff, right? Free Comic Book Day 2025, Scourge of the Serpent, this fall, 4 issues. September, October, November, December. Scourge of the Serpent runs parallel alongside Conan. 25 is a special issue, although we're normally doing these 4-issue arcs. 25 is going to kind of be its own cool thing.
Nice.
Oversized issue, very cool. My first King Conan story, fully painted by Alex Horley. 26, 27, 28 is a 3-part story that is going to carry thematically, but I don't want to reveal what that is yet. It's a big swing. It's a pretty auspicious, crazy thing, and I am very excited for people to find out about it. That's going to be coming out while Scourge of the Serpent comes out. And so just like how we did Frozen Faith was coming out while Blackstone was coming out. So it's like we moved all the Blackstone stuff over to the miniseries, and the regular monthly series was sort of a breath of fresh air of just like, okay, we're doing this, Frost Giant's Daughter plus kind of story. The stories that we're doing in 25 to 28 are not connected to the Serpent stuff directly. It's its own thing. It's still part of the broader continuity,
Right.
but it's going to be, you can read them and enjoy them as the regular monthly. And then onwards to 2026. Because you've noticed now that Titan is publishing these novels that also have thematically the same. So they did the Blackstone, tie-in. Well, it's not a tie-in book. It is, but it's like thematically it uses some of the Blackstone pieces. I had to give them the outline for Serpent very early so they could bring out a Serpent-related, novel. They want that material earlier than ever. So they asked me to do my outline for the event for 2026. I handed that in last month, and it's already approved and done. So
Wow.
I know
Sweet.
where we're at end of 2026. So for anyone telling you, what's the future of this book, I know we're at next fall. I know all the pieces we got to put into place, and I know how we got to tee it up.
That's
I know
fantastic.
exactly, and that the event books are all different from each other. So Blackstone, we brought all these characters physically in the same space, and they went on this adventure together. It's not just going to be, every year the Avengers, every year these guys all meet up and they do stuff. I'm playing with form. I'm playing with narrative. I hope it all works. I think it works. I think it's very cool. I'll tell you one thing. Ivan's artwork is friggin' stunning. So you won't have anything to worry about in terms of the visuals. And I haven't even asked him yet, but assuming this all works out, I would love to book him for the event for next year. So,
Oh, nice.
yeah.
Yeah, make him your event guy, huh?
I would love to,
Yeah.
and I'm going to get to meet him. So in a couple weeks, over a beer, that's probably the right time to ask him.
You got to make
if
him
he
sign that blood.
If he
pact.
doesn't watch this video before then.
Yeah. Let's just say it's good to be a Conan fan, and you don't have to worry about anything currently. It's
there's
very
always
smooth. It's very smooth.
I'm glad in front of the curtain it always looks smooth. Like that's the key. It's not to say that it's like some crazy stressful thing. It's stressful because we want to bring our best. It's stressful because we love what we do, but it's never stressful. Like getting on a call with Chris and Ashley is not a hardship. We're always laughing and excited and showing off artwork and getting crazy. I threw out a couple of funny ideas not even funny, but just like wild ideas in the last meeting.
Yeah.
Chris was like, when are we doing that? I said, oh, that's a 2027 problem. Don't worry about that. We were just laughing and laughing. Like, it's very cool. Fred and Jay, they took a big vacation because Jay turned 50. And so they wanted to do like a big thing. And they were sending a bunch of vacation photos, and we were looking at vacation photos from them. And I was like, Jay hasn't commented on stuff in quite a while. And they go, because he trusts you, because, it's in good hands. And that's it's a very special thing. It's a very cool thing. I've been doing San Diego with the Titan gang, last 2 years. And I said to them, like, have I worn out my welcome? Do you want me back at the Titan booth in 2025? And they were like, do we? Like, three-peat, let's go. They were like, what do they call it in Canada?
Right.
Hat trick? Like, let's go, So, so I'll be back at San Diego with the Titan crew. I don't know if that's been formally announced, but like, whatever, it's happening. They're going to have some, like they did last year, there'll be a couple exclusive variants that they're going to do at the booth there. I know those are happening because I got advanced shipped copies of them. They didn't even tell me they were coming. And so they showed up in the mail the other day, and I was like, well, that's fun. So it's cool. It's a really exciting time. The fandom's amazing. I'm so proud of the book, and I'm really proud to be chatting here with you guys for like almost 2 hours. So
Not bad for 1 hour live stream.
Let's call it.
Thank you so much, man. It's been such an honor to sit here with you and listen to
No, it's been a pleasure, honestly. Like I the panel that I'm doing at MCM Expo, I didn't title this, by the way. Someone was like, oh, it's spotlight on, with the King of Conan. And I actually bristled when I saw it, because I was like, please don't call me the King of Conan. Robert E. Howard is the King of Conan. I'm a bard for the barbarian. I'm very proud to be part of this broader chain. I don't have, even the nickname Grim Jim Zub is a joke, right? Like
That's
it's
awesome.
like,
Right,
it's
a
like calling,
callback.
Yeah.
well, it's like calling the big guy tiny. Like I'm the least grim guy kind of around. And the stuff I write is nasty and violent and brutal. But like I am very, very fortunate and thankful to people like you and to the fandom as a whole. So thanks for making my dreams come true. And thank you for changing the arc of my career. All of you who are watching and all of you here in front of me now. So I hope that, we continue to excite and entertain you month after month, and that we earn that cover price. But it really is a team effort. And tell us what you like, tell us what you don't like, tell us constantly and exuberantly, and we will do our best to uphold the legacy.
Excellent.
All
You
right.
write it, we buy it. So.
Thanks,
Right.
man. That's very, very kind. Seriously.
I think the biggest takeaway you should take is that we wouldn't be supporting it if it wasn't above par and hitting what it
Cool.
should hit.
Yeah, it means a lot. I did Howard Days last year, and Bill Cavalier, I won, one of the Howard Awards, which was the literary one, which was a bit contentious because comics don't normally even get nominated in that category. And I was very, very proud. And Bill, I come over and he gives me a big hand on the shoulder and he goes, "We don't normally give them to the funny books, but you kids are doing a good job." And I was just like, "Oh, yep, yeah, that's right." Tell the 48-year-old that he's the new generation of Robert E. Howard fans. You're like, holy crap, So it's kind of hilarious.
Well, yeah, because what you're doing is reinvigorating sales with Conan proper, like at the the original properties that Robert E. Howard wrote. Without the work that you guys do and other creators do, this property doesn't stay alive in publication.
That's the thing. And what Fred and Jay have very wisely realized is that the comic is like a monthly metronome. It reminds people that the property exists. It's the most consistent Conan thing that comes out. It comes out way more than any video game, comes out more than the novels. It comes out more than any movie or film or television, and prose publishing as well. And so it becomes the heartbeat of the fandom. If we're doing it well, we remind people why it's great, and we keep it in mind, and we keep it visible. We keep it vibrant and exciting. And if we do it poorly, then it fades away. And so it is really, really valuable in that way.
When Ed Pressman was looking for a vehicle for Arnold to get into the movie industry, and he was saying, "Oh, it's got to be Conan." He didn't come with any prestige books. He didn't even come with the original Robert E. Howard books.
Right.
He came with the comics and presented it.
Yeah, I mean, it was, like if you look at the highs of the character in the franchise, it's like obviously the Lancer paperbacks with the Frazetta covers brings it back into the spotlight, and then as it starts to dip again, the Marvel comics pick it back up, and that sustains it for during the 70s. The three books that held Marvel up during some really rough financial periods was Spider-Man, Star Wars, and Conan. Like that speaks to the strength of the title and the loyalty. Like I said, the loyalty. I joked around about it, but I was serious. I said, I'm everyone's dad's favorite new comic book writer. Like these guys who have not read comics in years, who generationally, they used to always buy Savage Sword, or they had a subscription, or they picked it up off the stands. They're coming back in a big way because the word of mouth has been so consistent and so good. And that means a lot to me. And I don't mean this to be crass, but like those guys are in their 50s, 60s, 70s, and they have disposable income and they have a lot of nostalgia. And if you give them something worthy, they don't mind spending for it, Exactly. And that's not to say like I want to suck the money out of their wallets, but it just means that's a dependable readership that if you give them quality, you can count on them. And that is
really here first.
Positive.
Jim Zub called me old.
Dude. I don't know. But seriously though, like this is the thing. you know, like, and it's a powerful thing when you are like tapping into something that reminds us of our youth and hopefully doing it, you know, well. It is a powerful thing. Look at Transformers and GI Joe and all this other stuff like that.
Yep.
That has struck a chord over with the Skybound books because they're doing quality and they're putting it out in a great way. So anyways, I'm going to wrap it all up. I really appreciate you guys setting this up. I know it took a long time to happen, but we've made it happen.
Well worth it. Thank you so much for coming on the show.
100%.
We appreciate it.
No
and
worries.
I want to thank my co-host and, of course, thank Mr. Jim Zub for his time. He gave us double what he had planned, so thank you, Jim. And we're going to let him get out of here, and we're going to say like we always do, thank you for watching us live. And those of you catching us on the rewind, we certainly appreciate you. And as always, keep it casual.